Hi, I'm Cassie.
And I'm Mariah.
And this is the Cassie and Mariah Show, a podcast where two long-distance internet friends, that's us, discuss navigating their 20s through disability and chronic illness. Mariah, I'm gonna be honest, saying that intro never gets old. It kind of slaps.
Right?
That's us.
It's awesome. And it's even better when we have to repeat it because you laughed during the middle of it.
Well, it's because whenever we do like the thumb pointing at self when I say that's us, it makes me giggle. But I love it. And it's relevant because, today we'll be talking about fandom and, first you have to be a fan of yourself.
Facts, dude. Your biggest fan is yourself. It has to be.
But how are you? How's your week been?
My week's been good. Pretty normal over here. I had a dentist appointment this week, which is very exciting because I haven't been to a dentist in a bit. It's one of those doctors that, like, I enjoy going to the dentist, but, like, sometimes you find a dentist and they suck. Like, they just suck as people, so it makes you not want to go. But this time around, I went to a really good dentist, very clean and friendly office, so I had a great time. Although, I do have to say, when I was in the waiting room for this dentist, it's like, sometimes there's people that you see at doctor's offices that once they walk into the room and they see that they have to wait, they're immediately annoyed. And it's like, I understand, we got places to be. But, like, you have to expect to wait at a doctor's office. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to get seen right away, especially at a dentist. I feel like I've never waited anywhere longer than I have at a dentist. So I am just sitting there, filling out the new patient paperwork. And this woman comes in, sees there's like 5 people in the waiting room, and does this big, like, huh, like, a huff. And I was like, okay, woman, okay. So, she checks in, whatever. I'm filling out the paperwork. I bring it back to the receptionist, give her the paperwork. I go sit back down. And then I realize, like, she calls me up for something else. So I go up for something else. This woman, I turn around. This woman took my seat. She literally hopped 2 chairs over and took my seat. I turn around and she's sitting there in the seat that I was just in. And I just looked at her and I was like, what? And then I just sat in another seat. But I was like, why'd you take my seat? Like, what the hell's wrong with you? I was like, that's such a weird thing to do, especially because there was a bunch of other seats opened in the dentist office. So I was like, okay, whatever, I'll let it slide. And then she starts listening to Instagram reels on her phone out loud. And then starts playing music off her phone out loud. Like, she just was being so annoying. And, like, she knew it, too. And it was an older woman, too. And I just was so surprised. Because then she starts watching a video that someone, I guess, sent her of, like, a child in the background or something. And I was just like, what are you doing? Like, you're in a waiting room right now. And I was surprised the receptionist didn't say anything to her because she was being so loud. But then I eventually I went back, to be seen by the hygienist. So I was like, everything's fine. But I just was so shocked that she took my seat. It really, like, left an impact on me. I was like, it just felt like such a catty thing to do. Because, like, what did I do? Like, why are you dragging me into this?
I just think, obviously, obviously it was National, like, Be Insufferable Day or something. But,
literally.
But I am a little fascinated just by the description of your dental experience because you're like, sometimes you get a dentist who sucks. And I'm like, I've gone to the same dentist since I had teeth. Which, although I've gone there so long that the people who owned it before have moved to Utah. They're Mormon. I just feel like
I was gonna say, did they become Mormons?
They already were, and so then I was convinced after that I assumed that all dentists are. I'm still a little confused. I'm unclear as to what's the haps with my current dentist. It's also just weird because it's like before I went there, like my dad's gone there for years, so it's like. We have a long history there, and you say you've never waited anywhere longer than the dentist, but I hardly sit down, And they're like, Cassie, let's go. And I'm like, okay, let's go. So,
wow, the Oregon, another East Coast, West Coast difference, man.
Yeah, couldn't just be our specific dentists. I will say I am surprised, like, your story about this insufferable woman. I'm like, like, I can't, for as many waiting rooms as I've said, oh my God, does that mean I'm the annoying one?
I doubt it.
It's being like, oh, like, who's the gay cousin? And then you're like, oh shit, it's like, I'm just like, oh shit, because I'm like, I feel like I don't actually encounter that many annoying people in waiting rooms. Meanwhile, I make myself at home.
You know what it is? I think that I don't find a lot of annoying people in waiting rooms. It's very few and far in between. But this woman was just hell-bent on being the worst. So I think that was her issue, was that, like, she wanted to be annoying. Like, I feel like she was someone that, like, was doing stuff intentionally because she wanted someone to say something to her. Like, she, people, like, fish for that attention. But otherwise, I went to a new pizza place that I'd never been to before, which is very good. Not too much to report.
What kind of pizza?
Have you ever had a grandma pie before?
Oh, what?
A grandma pie. So there's a pizza pie. I'm gonna have to look this up. So, okay, there's a type of pizza. Grandma? Let's Eat Grandma? No.
A good band.
I don't know what that is.
It's like I think they're like a hyperpop duo type situation.
Oh, that makes sense. Hyperpop bands would have that name. Okay. They have weird names. What do you want me to say? Okay, so this makes sense as why you wouldn't have it. A grandma pizza is a thin rectangle style pizza that's like origins began in Long Island, New York. So it's usually like the normal tomato sauce, cheese, but it's like it's actually compared to like a Sicilian pizza. It's like a thicker crust, but like not to be confused with like a deep dish pizza. It's like thick crust. The sauce is just the normal tomato sauce, but the way that they do the cheese on the top makes it not like a stringy cheese. It's more of just like a cheese where you cut and there's no, like, it wouldn't break apart like a normal pizza. And usually it's in a square. The edges get really crispy. So anyway, but yeah, mostly it's like the crust, because I guess the crust is what makes it, because it's usually made on a cookie sheet. Imagine like a cookie sheet, like, and that's what you make your pizza on.
Good crust.
Exactly. Well, that's why I really like it. So you should ask next time you go to get pizza. You should say you all got grandma pizza.
I will be sure to ask Papa Murphy's that.
How they react to your schooling them on pizza.
You do have Papa Murphy's, right?
I don't know who that is. Doesn't sound familiar to me.
Are you fucking serious? Papa Murphy's isn't a national pizza chain?
Papa Murphy?
Are you serious? They have take and bake pizza. Are you serious?
Take and bake pizza?
You take the pizza and you bake it at home.
No. Let me see. There's a Papa Murphy take and bake. The closest one, I literally think the closest one is like in West Virginia.
I am like shook right
now.
No,
there's none literally here. Yeah, Virginia is the closest Papa Murphy's to me.
I thought that, wow. Oh, it began in Vancouver, Washington.
Those Canucks and their take and bake pizza.
What did that mean?
Canucks? It's like Canadians?
No, I said Vancouver, Washington.
Yeah. Oh, wow, Vancouver. I thought immediately Canada. I was ready to drag those those Maple Leafs
not
through the
Vancouver,
mud.
comma Washington, comma BC, comma Canada, but Vancouver, Washington, as in just across the river from Portland. Wow, their headquarters is in Vancouver. I should go work for them.
Why not?
I thought it said
change your whole life's direction.
I thought it said their parent was MTV Food Group, but it's MTY. I was like, MTV owns Papa Murphy's.
You're having a whole epiphany right now.
And the pizza's cheaper on Tuesdays.
Wow, Pizza Tuesday.
Yeah, literally, that is the day that, was that this week? No, that was last week, that my mom and I got pizza for dinner, and then my dad came home from work and had gotten pizza on his way home for all of us for dinner. And
Icon.
it's like, yeah, it was a Tuesday, and so he got texted the Papa Murphy's pizza coupon and had to go.
Wow. You know what? Like, I feel like, you know, we have Domino's around here. I used to like Pizza Hut. Pizza Hut was my shit when I was younger.
Did you have
They got rid of it.
reading individual pizzas for, you would like read? I only got them in preschool, so I'm like having very
it's like
vague
a, yeah.
memories. It's like you would
Where
read.
you like read books and then you get like the individual pizza coupon.
God, America rocks sometimes. Capitalism is good.
When it benefits kids, when you read a book and you get a free pizza.
Yeah.
Like, there's nothing that goes on in this, you know? There's no real transactional value here. Kids read and they get happy with pizza, you know?
Damn.
But anyway, I don't like Domino's. I'll get their, like, pasta bowls sometimes. Like, they have a chicken Alfredo pasta bowl that I'll get. But usually they burn the piss out of it. So I don't understand why they do this.
I can't remember what I'm thinking of.
Pizza Hut used to have the cookie pizza.
Papa Murphy's has one of those. Or no, they have a dessert wheel that has like, it's like cinnamon sugar oatmeal. It's very good.
Cinnamon sugar oatmeal?
It's like, you know how there's like oatmeal cookies and stuff? There's like oats involved in the making of this thing. I don't remember what all it is.
They were in the room when it was made.
I just, yeah, it's like LaCroix. I just remember there was pizza that one of the higher ups at my community college, on production days when he felt like it, he would order the student newspaper team pizza for dinner, because we'd be like the last ones on campus, like working on finishing the paper, and so good.
Anyway, yeah, grandma pie pizza. This time I actually had pepperoni on it, which I was very surprised. It was just delicious. I got 2 slices, and it's enough pizza, because like I said, the crust is nice and thick, so it adds a nice just like texture to it, makes it really filling. I got garlic knots, which the garlic knots were very underwhelming though, because I like garlic knots where it's like heavy with the seasoning, like the garlic and the butter, and like very garlicky, salty, but these really weren't that. But I'd still go back to this pizza place. I just really like the atmosphere too. I like that we were able to sit there and you actually can see, because it was on the top of a hill by like the bay, you can see the water, you can see the boats outside. Like, it was a cute little experience. And it was nice and clean in there. They were playing really good, like, throwback 2000s music. Like, they were playing, like, some alt bands, like AFI, and then they would play, like, Kesha, and then they play, like, early Katy Perry. Like, I was just, like, loving it in there. I was having a great time.
Wow. I do feel like maybe the pizza of your area is like the donuts of our area, where it's like I sent you a picture of that donut that one time, and you were like, that's not a donut. Donuts are round. And I was like, I'm sorry? Have you never been to a donut place?
I know. Now I'm thinking about, like, I don't see a lot of donuts that are rectangle or oblong shaped. They're mostly round.
Wow.
Yeah, they're mostly round donuts, huh? But I was getting it confused with an eclair, and then I had to write you an apology because I was wrong.
I
was truthfully wrong.
Chart of donuts.
You read me to filth. In other news this week, I'm resuming my hot girl walks. I've decided to stop laying in bed at 12 o'clock in the afternoon and get up and go for a walk. And it's a very thorough experience. It's a very good and thorough experience because I like to get a little sweaty and then I come home and I take a shower. Like, that makes me feel like taking a shower is worth it. You know what I mean? Where sometimes you're like, I'm not sweaty, but I want to get a little sweaty before I take a shower because now it's the summer. So I took a shower and I thought it was great. So now I was like, you know what? I need to get back in and do my walks, although it's hot out. But I think if I go early enough, like if I try to plan to go before noon, I'll be fine where it won't be that hot outside and I can take a shower when I get home and then like start my day. Because, like I've said in a previous episode, I'm not doing any more markets for the summer, at least not right now. So I'm like, I actually will have a little bit more extra time to take walks and, like, prioritize myself. So, yeah, Hot Girl Walks are coming back.
Nice. Love
the summer edition.
I was going to say, very brave, but I guess, yeah, doing them earlier in the day is better.
Yeah, like, my ideal thing would be to get up when I get up at 8 o'clock, to just get on, like, a pair of shorts or leggings, whatever, and go then. But that takes a lot of work to get myself out of bed. So.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
But anyway, what's been going on with you this week?
Literally, all I did this week was work on my paper and finish my paper.
Yay!
So
I know when we FaceTime the other night, you're working on it, and I've been keeping updated with your stories.
Yeah, my close friends' stories.
Yeah, all you haters out there that are not on Cassie Wilson's close friends. How does it feel to be a loser?
I will say that it is funny when I mention, like, to somebody, like, oh, I posted it on my close friends, and I'm saying it to somebody who's on my close friends, and they're like, oh, I'm on your close friends, and I'm like, you haven't noticed? I am giving you free content all the time. But anyway, so now I'm done with spring term and done with the school year technically, except for that my internship starts in like 10 days, and so then I'll technically be in school again because I'm getting credit for it. And so I need to like email my professor, because basically the way it's gonna work is I'm gonna like meet with her like just a couple times throughout the term, and like she's gonna assign me a couple readings that are kind of relevant so I can keep like learning and stuff, and then I can include them in an essay, like kind of like reflection essays about like what I'm learning and stuff like that. But I emailed her my availability and she never replied. So I gotta figure that out. It's my first time doing an internship and first time obviously getting credit for it, so it's a learning process as to how it works, but I think it'll be probably, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be very low key. Just have to have something to get credit for, so like do some sort of assignment so I can get credit, basically.
Yes. I love that. That's fun.
But yeah, I mean, like, otherwise pretty much not much doings. Yesterday my mom had a longer appointment and procedure, so I got to hang out in the hospital cafeteria. I love that I got to, because listen, I know how to do hospital well now. I'm good at it, and so it's like I immediately upon, like, this is so shitty, but we check in at the main floor of the hospital, and then they're like, okay, we're gonna like go up to whatever floor, blah blah blah. And I was like, cool, I already know what floor, I already know what waiting room, we were just there. I was like, cool, I'm not coming up with you, because they're just taking her straight back. So I'm like, I'm not coming up with you, I am immediately going to find food. I'd like just peace out, like, have fun, I'm going. And so I'm like, okay, the hospital lobby, like, coffee shop closed, all right, cool. I did indeed go and get non-union Starbucks and feel guilty about it, but you know what? Survival tactics, baby. We got to do what we got to do here. And you know what? There was a tipping option, I'm just realizing, which is rare at Starbucks. There was actually a tipping option when I paid with cards. So, at least that store's got that going for them, even without being union. But yeah, so I went and got my food, and then I took it back to the hospital cafeteria where I set up and worked on my paper while I was eating my breakfast and stuff. And it's like, yeah, there everybody is eating the shitty expensive. That's the thing. I wouldn't judge people for eating the hospital cafeteria food if it was cheap, but it's not. It's so expensive, and it's absolute trash. So it's like, why not just go to somewhere nearby? Because it's literally downtown Portland. And And so, yeah, I was just sitting there thriving. Although at first my laptop wasn't connecting to the Wi-Fi and it was freaking me out. But then it got its shit together, and so I was able to thrive, really. You know, home is where the Wi-Fi automatically connects.
Yes. No, I was going to say, like, with the hospital food, you're so right. Like, I've had the worst sandwiches of my entire life in a hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And it's so bad. It's why am I going to have this? Like, I'd rather go somewhere else.
But that cafeteria has the best fucking slices of cake, because a lot of their, like, dessert stuff or, like, kind of even their sandwiches and stuff are, like, made by, like, local, like, kind of catering or wholesale companies that, like, make pre-prepared food for places that have cafeterias like that. And so they have these cake slices from some bakery you can't actually normally buy from, or at least not that I'm aware of, and they're so fucking good. And I only know because my dad and I tried all of them when she was in the hospital for her transplant in December. So I thought about getting them, but the problem is I'm pretty sure I can't reach them in the cold case. And how embarrassing to just ask somebody to hand you a giant slab of cake, because
non-accessible cake.
I know, inaccessible cake, not good. Because the cafeteria ladies have judged me and my dad before, like, how many people are you feeding when we've gone through there? And I'm like, hello, you have to, again, hospital strategy. This is not all for now. This is also for later. Like,
yeah, right? Know. Like, if you're waiting for someone to get out of an appointment, you know, sometimes you're grabbing something because you're going to eat it on the way home. Like, you know,
exactly.
Yeah, it's always like, also, who gives a shit? I'm paying for it. It's
right?
probably going to get thrown out at the end of the day anyway, so what does it matter?
Me, I don't know that they ever threw anything out, because the same pizza would still be sitting there 3 days later.
Health code violation at your local hospital.
I mean, the one and only time I got, like, food poisoning was from the, like, rotisserie pizza at my college, so...
I got food poisoning. I got really bad food poisoning from Texas Roadhouse. Every time I've gone there, I've got food poisoning. And, like, my brother got food poisoning. And then also my grandmother got sick from there. And I'm like, dude, you have come for the people that I love.
Where's the class action lawsuit?
Speaking about places we love, or I feel like there's a good segue here. I'm not a fan of Texas Roadhouse. But I am a fan of being in fandoms. I'm a fan of other stuff.
What are you a fan of?
Like, in my current life?
I don't know. What? Yeah. What are you a fan of? What are you like, I'm dying on that hill?
I don't know. This is a loaded question. I wasn't prepared. See, the thing is like, I think once you get together, here's the thing. Okay, maybe I'm a fan of, like, maybe I'm, like, a diehard fan of, like, certain video game franchises, right? Like, that, because that could be, like, the fandom for me. Like, I think people always talk shit about, like, Sonic the Hedgehog games, where they're like, these games are bad, or, like, they, like, don't fit into... Of course, they're not going to fit into, like, the childhood nostalgia that you had for these games when you were a kid. Because, like, here's the thing. A lot of these games and stuff now that are, like, people like Mario, Sonic, Pokemon, they're, like, made for kids. Like, they're made for the new generation of gamers. So, of course, adults aren't going to be that into it. Or, like, they're not going to like the style choices. Or, like, you know, any of, like, the levels are too easy, yada, yada, like, all this stuff. And I'm just like, I think you guys have to realize at some point, like, sometimes games that are rated E for everybody are for everybody, including children. So, like, of course you're going to blow through a game in a weekend where, like, a kid's going to take a longer time with it. Or, like, you know, how, like, there's games like Fortnite, which people are like, oh my god, this game's for babies. And it's like, sure, like, the game's for kids, but, like, you know, adults always play that stuff too, but, like, I think people just have to realize that, like, a lot of games that are made are for mostly, like, middle schoolers type of kids, or, you know, even people younger, because, like, there's always, like, new Sonic games coming out, and people are like, oh, like, Sonic games are so easy, or, like, they're so tailored to children, and, like, there was one Sonic game that came out, I think it was on, like, the Wii U, or just, like, in that era of, like, consoles, and it was, like, really easy, and it was very silly, and people were like, this game sucks, but, like, it's based off of, like, the Sonic, it's, like, the Sonic Boom cartoon that was on Cartoon Network at the time, so it's, like, yeah, of course you, as a 30-year-old man, are not going to like this game. It's literally for 11-year-olds. Like, It just makes me so annoyed. I guess that's the thing that I'm dying on this hill is like, not all video games are meant for like an adult audience. Yes, you can enjoy them, but like they're literally made for kids half the time. So let a kid play a video game. If they think it's cool, then they think it's cool. You don't have to give your take on it.
So you're a Sonic stan.
Of course I am.
Good.
I think that like that blue hedgehog could do no wrong. He could be, what's the thing where it's like he could have 1 million fans and I'm one of them. Like he could have one fan and that fan is me. And if he had no fans, it means that I'm dead. Like,
yeah. Good.
I think that nowadays, as like an adult, I'm more fans of video games than I are of anything else. But I guess it's because like we talked about this in our Gamer Girls episode, where you can like almost appreciate this stuff better as an adult, and like there's more stuff to get into now, where there's like so many games you can go back and play, and so much more content to absorb. And I just, well, like anything that I can have fun playing. Like, I'm not going to give too much of a hot take about something because I'm like, oh, I just like this thing. And that's what I like.
Yeah. I was thinking philosophically earlier about fandoms because I'm kind of just like, I feel like they require something sentient, whether it's real or fake. Because I was thinking about, like, because I think that then develops the emotional attachment.
Yes.
You know? Because you've got, like, because you're, like, the love is so deep, and, like, there's also, like, the parasocial relationship aspect that, like, makes it as deep as it is. And it's, like, so it's, like, you have, because I was thinking about how there's, like, layers to it. It's, like, it'll be like One Direction's your favorite band, but then within that you have favorite members, favorite songs, favorite albums, favorite whatever, favorite inside joke, like all this stuff that's like favorite within favorite because you're so deeply invested.
Good point.
And it's like, because I was trying to think about, like, I was like, you know, you could get all the people who are fans of, like, garlic bread together, and, you know, it's just, because, I know what it is. Because, like, well, I don't know, it's interesting to think about, but it's anything that continues to produce content, actually.
Oh, true.
Because, like, when, like, the peak of One Direction fandom was that they were on tour, they were constantly doing stuff, there were constantly updates, so you constantly had stuff to talk about. Like, soccer teams, they're kicking the ball. Video games, they're releasing new versions. Like, because I feel like it's, like, I mean, and otherwise, like, at least for, like, bigger fandoms, constant, current, active fandoms, because you can always have like a little fandom for something that's like from the past and isn't giving you any new content. Like, I don't know what the One Direction fandom is like now, but although that's the thing, all the solo members are still doing stuff, so there's still always more to say.
Yes.
Like, half the like Niall interviews that I have saved on YouTube right now have One Direction in the title because they're asking him about it. So it's like there's still more to go off of. That's the thing, is as long as there's something new to go off of, there it's like a way to still be super active in the fandom versus like there's only so much you can do with something that's not producing anything new for you to talk about.
No, you're so right, because like I think a lot of the times, like even from my perspective of like I was into One Direction during their peak. Actually, I don't know if it's really during their peak. The Midnight Memories era was like when I was actually like heavily invested into them. Otherwise, like, before that, I just wasn't into, like, pop music, whatever. And then I saw Harry Styles and was like, wow, I guess I like One Direction. So, like, and that's the thing where, like, I feel like a lot of One Direction fans and, like, a lot of One Direction fan accounts, things like that, have just turned into, like, individual member accounts where it's just, like, okay, their favorite member ends up, like, you know, Harry Styles now is your favorite member, so now you just talk about him most of the time and share clips about him, share things about him, whatever. And, because I feel like everybody else, like, as much as we love Niall and Louis, I feel like Harry, there's just always something to talk about. Like, I guess because he's the most active out of everybody with, like, constantly touring. And, like, he's just constantly in a spotlight, whatever he's doing. Like, you know, when he was at the Grammys, XYZ. so I think that that's why, like, people gravitate towards him a lot. But also just, like, in the fact of, like, yeah, like, a lot of these people, you know, and I think, too, is, like, everyone, like, I feel like everybody at the One Direction fandom during that time is now, like, our age now. So you're, like, doing other things, like, you are working at a job or you're in school and you're just, like, not able to dedicate that much time into a fandom anymore like you used to be able to. Or just, like, your mentality changes as well. Like, you're not, like, so hyper-fixated on stuff because you're not, like, a teenage girl.
Well, and that was something else that I was thinking about, too, is how fandom is, like, a spectrum, because it's almost like it's a specific thing, like, when you refer to fandom specifically, because it's, like, I feel like, I don't know, I'm thinking about, like, how, like, what some of my first quote-unquote fandoms would have been before I knew what fandom was, and it feels like it was, like, Taylor Swift and, like, High School Musical and Camp Rock and stuff like that, but it's, like, it was just being a really intense fan, but not in the same way that you're an active, because I feel like fandom itself requires other people, and when you're a kid and you're isolated, like, you don't have, like, you're not, like, you don't know other fans, you're not necessarily part of fandom, you're an individual fan, like, big fan, but, like, fandom is, like, a community that you're part of.
That's so interesting. You're right, like, because even when I was a kid, like, I was into, like, I was just thinking when you were saying that, like, the anime, I guess it's just more of a cartoon, maybe. It was Hamtaro. Mm-hmm. Do you know who Hamtaro is? Yes.
Yeah.
So I was really into, like, the games, the show at the time, and then, like, I collected, like, the Burger King toys and stuff like that they came out with, or any of, like, there used to be, like, a hobby shop near me that sold a lot of their stuff, so I'd get the Hamtaro stuff from there.
Oh, nice.
And I was just like, oh, this is, like, my thing. And I just was like, nobody knows about this niche hamster. Like, nobody knows about this. And then you get older, you're like, oh my god, a bunch of other people also like that when they were that age too. It's like, it's really, like, that, like, it's a very, like, synchronous thing of, like, you go through these, like, individual, like, fan phases when you're kids, and then, like, you know, you find people that were into that stuff when you got older, and it's always like, wow, like, I wonder what made all of us like this.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting too, like, yeah, the aging thing that you mentioned of, like, yeah, it's not the same now as it was when we were able to be active participants every day in fandom, and that's kind of what our world revolved around in a way, versus, like, now it's, like, in a way, it feels like, you know, the One Direction fandom is for life, baby, but, like, it's because I'm literally, like, so many of my closest friends I met that way, and so it's, like, but it is a little funny because I'll post, like, being like, Niall announced a tour, why wasn't there a presidential alert? And nobody, you know, nobody who follows me now is like, what? Everybody's like, what the fuck, Cassie? Everybody's like, who the hell's Niall? You know, what's One Direction? And I'm just like, and so it is different in that sense, but it's like, it's still fun knowing that it's, like, the handful of people I met through fandom, like, still do follow me and relate, and I'm just so old now that I'm fucking falling asleep thinking about how exhausting fandom is, I guess.
It's so funny you say that, too, when you, like, share something now and people, like, either resonate with it or don't, because, like, you know, when I was in high school, I was really into, like, you know, alternative music. Why not? You know, and I was really into Woe Is Me. Like, that was, like, my band.
Okay.
And they posted they're coming out with new music. So they posted, like new promo. Yeah, new music with, like, the close to original lineup as they can get, which is, like, so fun because, like, Michael Bond, who used to be in Issues, is in the band again. Like, you have
I'm like, I know you already said you liked One Direction, but I'm like, is this, like, your One Direction reunion?
Imagine that's, like, iconic. Saying Woe Is Me was my One Direction is so real, though, because, like, again, of just, like, each person in the band, like, at the time, I felt like each person in the band for Woe Is Me, had their own, like, following in a way. Like, people were really into the drummer because he's the one that started the band and he's the only original member. Whereas, like, people really liked, there was two brothers in the band, Corey Ferris and Ben Ferris. So it was like, who's your favorite Ferris brother? Or, like, what original duo of the singers did you like? Did you like... it was like, I think it started with like Tyler Carter and Michael Bond, and then you had Tyler left and you had another guy, Hans, come in, and then Michael left, so then you had Hans and Doriano, and like they both went back. Like, it was just kind of just like I said, the drummer was the only original member of the band, so a lot of people flip-flop throughout time. So now you have the duo of Michael and Hans, who at the time, I'm pretty sure they only had like one Woe Is Me song together, like through the entire band's career, like only one song released together. So that's the band, that's the lineup that's in there now. And they posted new photos that's like for their new tour, like, or not new tour, but like just new press photos. And in the pictures, Michael Bond, one of the members, had this big hat on. And I was like, and he used to wear a hat and a scarf when he was in the band. So I was like, Michael Bond's got a big hat on. That's when you know the new Woe Is Me music is going to slap. And a few of my friends that were Woe Is Me fans at the time liked it. And I was cracking up because they were like, no, you are literally right. And I'm like, wait, this is hilarious that you guys still think the same way. Because it's just like this like fandom thing where like you guys have all these memories together and like it can just take one thing to bring it up.
Well, and that is so real because I just think about how like me like staying obsessed when I'm reminded of Joe Jonas, you know, it's like because I was a Camp Rock stan, which obviously not the same thing as like the community aspect of fandom, but like it is interesting how being a big fan of something can stick with you forever because it's like, yeah, it's like it's one of those things where it's like you see someone wearing a One Direction shirt, you've never met them in your life, you have no idea who the hell they are, you can just talk and
yeah, you trust them in your life.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think that is beautiful. I mean, like, quite literally, you trust them with your life. Me meeting my fellow One Direction friends from the internet, and when I was a teenager, just being like, bye mom, gonna go meet my internet strange friends.
And that's I felt the same way with like the band Emily's Army / Swimmers when they first were coming up, because it was like you met people at their shows, like local fans, whatever. They were not a big band at all, so like you knew everybody that went to these shows, like you would see them time and time again. And I made a lot of Twitter friends, internet friends through loving this band, and I still talk to them nowadays. Like, it's fun to like kind of catch up with people and like see how everybody grows and see how everybody like is, like, you know, what everybody's up to nowadays and stuff. And it's like I trust them with my life, and like I've only met them like once in person, you know, like, but I know that this is someone that like we shared such a special connection to, and like no matter all this time has passed, you're like, oh, I still love them. And like, you know, so like anybody that and then the thing is that like, I don't know, my hot take is that like with some bands like that, it was a bit of like, we're like One Direction fans, I feel like there was this general consensus where everybody was like the big, you know, everyone's a fan. But like with some bands, which like maybe you felt like this with One Direction too, is like some of them was like, it was almost like you were in competition with them on who knew the most or who cared the most.
Well,
so like,
when I say fandom is a spectrum, that's what I mean in terms of like, yeah, like, well, but it's interesting. I don't know, because now ever since I said fandom is a community, it's also an interesting thing because I'm like, yeah, am I not a real Swiftie when I was like, you know, 10 and just listening to Taylor Swift because I didn't know anything about her. I just knew her music. You know what I mean? Like, it is like, yeah, it's like there is this competition of, oh, well, I followed Harry on tour. Cool, you're rich. You know, it's like,
right? Like, you got no job.
Like, or like, oh, like I actually met them. Oh, that's nice. You were able to afford VIP. It's like all these that, you know, it's like okay, like there's a lot of privilege that is interplays with fandom.
Yeah, like I think a lot of the time this is like, you know, I felt like that with the Emily's Army / Swimmer fans, and I felt like that with I mean, like, the thing is, like, a lot of, like, the alternative music, like, okay, I'll call, like, metalcore, even though I feel like that name is, like, defunct now, where it's, like, Issues, Woe Is Me, Of Mice and Men, Bring Me the Horizon, all stuff like that. It's, like, I feel like there wasn't a lot of people like that in that scene of music, but I think it's because, like, you only met them on Warped Tour, which, like, everybody was, like, an even playing ground. You didn't have to buy anything to meet them. You just had to be at their tent at a certain time. Or, like, you saw them on tour, and it's, like, Warped Tour or all these other supporting band tours. Like, so it was a very, like, you know, like I said, an even playing ground. But then there's some people that were like, oh, well, yeah, like, I went to multiple dates of their tour. Or, like, I met them and all this stuff. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, does that mean I'm not a real fan because I didn't do all the steps that you did? Like, they don't follow me on Twitter? Because that was a big thing, too, which I'm sure was also in One Direction, where it was, like, getting the band to follow you on Twitter and stuff. And to interact with you on social media was always, like, such a big thing. Because it was, like, again, of just, like, building, like, a parasocial relationship. Because you're like, oh, my God, like, they follow me online. And it's like, okay, but, like, maybe, you know, it's like, that doesn't matter. Like, it's not like what are you gonna do, DM each other?
I feel like, yeah, music and maybe YouTubers are the only kinds of fandom where this kind, and I could be totally wrong, and it's because I've never been as deeply involved in other forms of fandom, but I feel like they're the forms where it's, like, most relevant because, like, you have the opportunity to meet them. There's this in-person aspect because it's, like, otherwise, with other stuff, it's like, well, and I mean, but even with other stuff that is in person, like, I'm thinking of, like, sports, for example, it's like, it's like everyone is on an even playing field. Sports. Because you're all just, like, I mean, the only difference is maybe, like, where you sit or whatever, but, like, I don't know, for most sports, it doesn't really matter where you sit, and, like, you know, it's, like, you're not going to, like, meet the team. Like, there's no, like, weird, like, I feel like there's less of a parasocial, I mean, like, maybe for some people there's some parasocial relationship if that player posts a lot on social media or does a lot of press or something, but
right,
like, otherwise I feel like that it's more of a, like, for sports and stuff, it's more of a about the team and about the game and about, you know, being part of the being a fan of that team with other people. Like, it literally is the community aspect versus, like, yeah, it's almost like in music fandoms there's almost this way of, like, you're still that individual fan, but in a community with other people and, like, this competition. And something I remember one of my fellow disabled fans talking about was how, because of the way accessible seating is at venues, you don't always get the opportunity to be front row, so you rarely get set lists or drumsticks or guitar picks, and, like, you never have that full fan experience of being front row for your favorite bands and stuff. And I was like, damn, very real. But it's like, it also is interesting that we've come to understand those things as integral to the fan experience.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get that. Like, I remember when people getting set lists and stuff and, drumsticks and things like that, and it felt like such a big deal, because it was like, you know, you get a set list, like, there's only one for that show, or, like, only one, each band member, whatever, have one, so it was a very exclusive thing.
I still have all of mine.
So do I. I mean, I have one, too, yeah. I have, like, one from...
I've still got drumsticks from canceled bands.
Me, oh my God, it's like I can make a flower bouquet with the amount of drumsticks I have from canceled bands. Whoops. That's why I always think, you know, if I ever want to be crazy, I can always, like, edit my Twitter circle one day to include all the band members that still follow me on Twitter and be like, sup, guys?
Oh my God. Yeah, I've restarted my Twitter too many times for that.
Oh, no, I have not. That Twitter's still kicking from when I was a teen. Because, like, I'm pretty sure, like, All Time Low and Fall Out Boy follow me. I know the Wawa account follows me. And then, like, a few members or ex-members of Issues do. Shout out to the boys. So, you know, I feel like I could probably, you know, I've considered adding people to my Twitter circle, but I'm like, do y'all really want to know what I say on there? No.
Also, just to clarify, Fall Out Boy is not canceled, right? Just All Time Low.
Just All Time Low. Yeah, Fall Out Boy's not canceled. They're still, I mean, I'd be surprised. They're pretty big still, so.
True.
Do you think, as a disabled person, being involved in fandoms and things like that, like, brought you closer just due to the fact that, like, you couldn't go to a lot of shows, or that, like, it just felt like social media was one of those, like, primary ways of communicating with people? So, like, that's what got you into, like, more fandoms or more involved in this stuff than, like, maybe, like, a normal, like, teenage girl would have?
I mean, like, probably, theoretically. It's hard to know, you know, it's hard to imagine what life would be like if I weren't disabled, you know, because I'm like,
True.
Who knows what I'd be up to in my teen years. I don't know, in my mind, and I think it's so because I'm, like, obviously, because I can't, but I'm just, like, literally in another life, I'm, like, a fucking professional athlete, but that's besides the point.
You do gymnastics.
Exactly. But then I also do another sport because you age out of gymnastics so fast. I mean, I think part of it is being disabled, but another big part of it is also living in the middle of nowhere, because I got into One Direction in summertime when I was always, as a child, chronically meltdown bored. Because I was understimulated. I literally just did not have enough to do. And fandom completely changed that for me, because it was a full-time job, baby. I really, you know, I guess when I think about it, like, One Direction and Five Sauce were really my only actual fandoms that I would consider to be fandoms, I think.
Okay.
When I think about it. I think. Like, I can't think of anybody else that I, like, was in. Like, there was obviously, like, other bands and, like, stuff. I'm, like, looking around my room at all my, like, posters and stuff. I'm, like, you know, because it's, like, even, like, I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan, but, like, I ain't plugged in with the Gilmore Girls fandom, or if there even is one. Or, like, you know, like, Olivia Rodrigo. Like, I would never nowadays make, like, a fan account of someone, because I'm like, she's
True.
just a girl, and also she's younger than me, and that's weird. You know, it's like, I just, like, I guess now I'm just normal, which is boring. But I mean, you know, it's like, I mean, I did go to a lot of shows generally as a as a teen, but it's, I think with One Direction in particular, in comparison to, like, when I then got into, like, local artists and stuff, it's like, you know, One Direction, it was rare to get to see them, and also it's just, like, a different level, you know, like, in terms of getting all that content, like, and, like, having all that to talk about, and having a fandom that big. I almost feel like maybe, I was gonna say maybe Boy Genius is the next closest, which I feel like is true in terms of next closest, but even then it's like, yeah, it's, I mean, how am I in the fandom beyond posting about being excited when the album came out and then being excited to go to the show, you know? It's like, that's normal fan behavior.
And I think, too, is, like, with a band like Boy Genius, where we've talked about this before, where it's almost like the members kind of look down upon people that act like this. So, like, I've seen people in, like, the Boy Genius, like, subreddit talk about how, you know, during the Taylor Swift's Eras tour, they would make the bracelets. Like, people would make friendship bracelets and stuff like that. Yeah. Which led to now, like, Phoebe, you know, when Phoebe Bridgers was on the Eras tour, people would make Phoebe Bridgers-themed friendship bracelets. And now people are like, oh, well, we want to do that for Boy Genius shows. So they'll do it for Boy Genius, which I think the concept is fun to begin with. Like, I think making bracelets and trading them at shows, I love that shit. But also you had people that would throw the bracelets onto the stage at Boy Genius, which that's what, like, people were like, Julian Baker would, like, kick them because they're afraid of someone slipping on it. Like, someone's going to trip over that. And people were like, oh, I don't think that they like the friendship bracelets. But it's like, no, well, it's hard to, like, you're assuming. And two is like, you know, I think it's just because it's a hazard. Like, that's why they're moving it. We're like, that's what they'll look down upon in general, is the fact that now you're like, this fun thing, which was supposed to be a fan thing, now you're trying to drag everybody else into it. Which, like, you know, some people don't want that. But because with Boy Genius, it's like, yeah, exactly. Like you said, like, what else are you going to post about other than the fact that you're going to one of their shows?
Yeah, it's almost more, okay, I'm going to add another layer to this. I'm just going to keep Fandom is an onion. And, something about Shrek. Anyway, does Shrek have anything to do with onions?
Yeah, onions have layers. Because he says, like, something about an onion, and then they say onions have layers, because he has layers. Is that
where that comes? Okay. Wow. I'm not in the Shrek fandom. But I also think fandom is almost a bit of a feeling, because I did compare Boy Genius to being the One Direction of my 20s.
Okay.
And I think it's because it's like a feeling in a way in terms of level of excitement I get about things. Because like, for example, like when Niall announced his tour, again, I'm like, where's the presidential alert? Like, this is a big deal to me because I was such a big One Direction fan. I still am, lifestyle, etc. But like, it's, I don't know. It's just like interesting. But it's like, when, I don't know, when other random people like release albums or whatever, I'm like, whatever, or announce tours or whatever. I'm just like, cool, I mean, I'll listen, but it's not like I'm like, oh my god, the world, like when Boy Genius started teasing new music, I was like, oh my god, it's happening, because and especially with them being I guess it is literally the One Direction of my 20s, because I'm like, with them being a super group, which, I mean, obviously One Direction was a group, and then now they're solo, but like, it's like, I was a fan of each member of Boy Genius, and so then when they, did the Boy Genius thing, it was a big deal, and then I was like, oh my god, we're probably never gonna get this again, or at least not for another 10 years, and then it happened, and it was like, oh my god, like, it literally, this is the One Direction of my 20s, and I love that feeling. I love being excited about music. I love being a fan. You know what? Because here's the other philosophical thing I was thinking about. I think that fandom is so beautiful because it's literally built on mutual shared love, and that's beautiful.
Real. Yes, and like, I think that that's so true. And even like we were saying with Boy Genius, when they came back, I feel like that was a lot. Like, I remember
that was
seeing
my
the
Super
tweets
Bowl.
about, seeing the posts, like, people were so stoked. And I was like, holy shit, like, this is a huge thing. Like, the Rolling Stone cover, the photo shoots, like, they were like, I was like, this is very exciting.
I bought a physical copy of the Rolling Stone. Oh, wow, yeah, Cassie, that is fan behavior. And you know what else, too? I'm always shocked when people who aren't super into music know Boy Genius and listen to them and love them, because that little part of me that even when I was in the One Direction fandom would go, oh, they're not my little secret. That stupid little feeling. It's so dumb.
Gatekeeper.
But, like, I'm like, it feels so vulnerable. Like when people are like, oh, look, a Boy Genius shirt, and I'm like, I mean, yes, I wear it to be a conversation piece, but also, what do you mean?
Yes, no, you're so right. Like, yeah, you feel some type of way, even back then, like, when I was involved in fans, it's like, you feel some type of way when that's, like, not your little secret anymore, or, like, when people that you're not too friendly with, or like, in a way, like that stuff, the same things you do, and you're like, oh.
I know exactly what you mean, but I'm like, no, these were all completely normal, fun people who I'm very excited that they love Boy Genius, but I'm just also like, I'm like, why does that make me feel some type of way? And also, like, I don't know. I mean, they were never little and they were never your secret. You know what I mean? It's like, it's such a weird, it's a weird feeling to have when obviously it wouldn't be a thing in your life if it wasn't built on I don't know.
I get what you mean. And it's also just, like, fun to experience this stuff now as an adult and, like, have these feelings again, because it's just fun. Like, it's just fun to feel exhilarated like this. Even now, like, a lot of fandoms ride on, like, young teenagers or, like, women in some way. Like, I feel like, because back with One Direction, same thing with, like, the Beatles and stuff like that. Like, they would have never been where they were without the support of young women, and specifically teenagers. And I think that that's just, like, it's so crazy how much of a pull, like, we back then had over, like, what was popular and what wasn't. Like, there's a lot of, like, you know, once One Direction came out, it was like you would see all these, like, boy band groups, like, pop up all over the place because they were trying to capitalize on the fact that, like, teens love this. Like, you know, where I don't know if it's just nowadays, like, it would be really interesting if there was ever something like Wonder. I mean, actually, no, it's like, I feel like nowadays, like, K-pop groups are like the One Direction of, you know,
but even bigger.
But even bigger because they have, like, global. Yeah, they're like global takeover.
Which, like, I mean, One Direction was somewhat global, but, like, BTS is, like, and, like, K-pop in general are just, like, even big. It's almost like it's a convergence of other fandoms that, like, turned into, it's amazing and beautiful, and I don't know enough about it, but it's fun to witness.
It is fun, and it's fun to see people get really excited for this stuff all over again. And to go through these feelings and these phases. It's like, wow, like, I'm glad y'all are still doing this. Like, I'm glad people are out here carrying the torch still.
Well, and I think, you know what, though? That part about, like, it being women, I think maybe that's almost... Instead of that feeling we get about the, like, oh, it's not my little secret anymore, I think it's more so a feeling of, like, almost vulnerability, both in how the music understands us and how we understand the music, and, like, I don't know, now people can read you like a book, or also, like, just, like, the vulnerability of being a fan. Because I think when we feel like it's our little secret, we don't feel judged for being a big fan of something. True. And then it's like when other people know about it, it's like, it's almost like this vulnerability in sharing how much you love something. Because you don't want to be judged for it, because it's like, I feel like because fandoms are like an integral part of your, like, mental health.
Yeah, and I think, too, is, like, when somebody else loves something like this, too, it's like, you're like, okay, well, like, you love it a lot, and you're like, do I love it almost too much where it's, like, embarrassing? Yeah. Where it's, like, because you know so much about, you know, what you like, and you are so attentive to what the people in the band are doing, when some people are like, oh, I just like their one song, or I just like their music. I like this guy because he's hot, whatever. And you're like, no, but, like, he has a whole story. And it's like this whole thing. Like, you're like, wait, actually, no. Like, you know, that headband that Harry wears that he threw into the audience, like, had a whole story with it. And it
feels like somebody finding out you have a crush.
Ooh.
Or something.
That's real. That's literally how I felt with, like, the bands I was describing before, like, Woe Is Me, because I'm like, they're technically, like, theoretically, they weren't that big to have fans like this. Yeah. So it's like, you feel so weird liking a band like this, because it's like where, like, One Direction was, like, so far out of your reach, whether, like, meeting them, going to a One Direction show, whereas, like, a lot of these other bands that I liked were real people that you could meet at Warped Tour and stuff like that. So you're like, oh, this feels crazy, tweeting at them and saying stuff, because they're most likely just going to respond, because it's just a guy on a phone.
The way that I just immediately parallel that to crushes, you're like, One Direction, so out of reach, and I'm like, just like the best crush. Because a crush is good, because if you just want a crush, you don't want it to be somebody attainable, you don't want it to be somebody you interact with, you want that distance, and boy, that's something.
That's enlightening, because now I think about it, sometimes I'll have crushes on people that almost feel attainable, and you're like, and I'm like, that scares me, I don't want this, I like you better when you just exist in my head.
Yeah. And that was the other thing. One Direction was so good for that. It's like, you're bored in geometry. Okay, well, just imagine if One Direction walked in right now.
You wake up one day and your mom sells you to One Direction, and now your life is a Wattpad fanfic.
You what?
A Wattpad fanfic?
Oh, yeah.
I said. Wow, there's so much to cover. There's so much to think about.
I love being a fan, like, thinking about fandom, talking about fandom, like, just, it all just makes me so happy. I'm like, I feel like I'm good at being a fan, which sounds like a weird thing to say, But like I literally went from being a One Direction fan to then I went straight from that to local music and then filled in everything in between, like the size of those two things. And so it's like because like One Direction, I mean, like, yes, I was a Taylor Swift fan before that, but because One Direction was my first fandom, I went from like being like as deep of a fan as you can get to like to listening to and loving like very small bands who have like little to no fans and loving them the same way, but like, yeah, in a less like, I'm not like researching everything, it's more like we're friends, but like
right,
but it's like literally like being a fan of my friends too, like literally rooting people on, like supporting people. And it's like why I wanted to work in the music industry was because I was like, everyone should like deserve the same love and attention as One Direction. Is literally how I felt. And so it's like, yeah, I wanted to like work in music marketing. And anyway, now I'm I don't know, be a transportation planner.
You're a fan of trains.
Now I'm a fan of the bus. Relevant to that is that YouTube said, "Here, Cassie, do you want to watch Francis from TikTok go train spotting with Niall Horan?" Are you fucking kidding me? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I was like, that was... You did that for me? For me. You only did that for me. So yeah.
I had to lower my phone. You were getting very loud about that.
Yeah, I could see my audio waves maxing out there, and so I also apologize to our listeners, but this is what fandom does to you, okay?
This is your mind on fandom. Oof. I mean, like, you know what's so funny to me? It's like, when I was heavily invested in the Green Day fandom, it was like, it was hard to, I guess, look at it from this perspective. Because I would be like, oh my God, look at this picture of Billy Joe Armstrong. And it's like, that's a 40-year-old man. Like, that's a father. Like, you know what I mean? Where it's like a lot. That's why I think a lot of the times, like, One Direction was one of those only bands that you could actually, like, really, like, be like, oh my God, they're so cute. Like, they're so hot. They're so silly. Because it's like, it was one of those the only bands that I liked at the time where it's like the members were still, like, teenagers. So you were like, it's not so, like, they're not so much older than you. Right. And, like, Green Day fans were, again, of this, like, also, like, a huge, broad age range where you would go to a Green Day show and there's people that are, like, fathers with their kids there. Like, it's not just a bunch of teen girls. But, like, I did make a lot of Green Day fans that were teen girls. And I feel like that was, like, one of the fun parts was because, like, then that's when you could talk about, like, oh my God, they're so cute, right? Like, tee-hee, like, type of thing. But, again, of just this, like, okay, like, that's, like, a father of, like, children, you know? So it feels a little weird. But, and I feel like, too, is that, like, the Green Day fans it was very, like, also, like, heavily male-dominated space. So I think that was another thing, too, of just, like, you know, it's, like, not that women weren't welcomed, but it's just, like, you like them because they're cute. Like, you like them because you think they're hot type of thing. And it's like, okay, like, misogyny. Like, you could also just like their music. Like, you don't have to only like them for looks and whatever. And, like, they also just had a lot of music. So it really, like, was this huge, broad, like, oh my God, like, everybody, like, each album had, like, an era. And each, like, era followed, like, certain looks that they had. Like, in the early Green Day days where, like, Billy Joe Armstrong would, like, bleach his hair, and you're like, oh my God, like, you know, his, like, blue hair was, like, a dookie phase and stuff like that. Like, you know, this album phase. And it was, like, that was really fun to keep up with and kind of piece together. And also just talk to the people that, like, were fans of Green Day and be like, oh my God, like, this song meant this. And, like, this member of the band wrote this song and not this one. And, like, this person was in the band at the time. And, like, it just spanned so much. And I always like finding out people were Green Day super fans when they were young, because I'm like, it doesn't surprise me. It's like sometimes with people, like with certain people, you can kind of tell that they were really into it too, which I think that's just another fun layer of, like, being a fan as you get older and you're like, oh yeah, I could totally tell you were, like, a One Direction fan when you were younger, and you're almost like, you can always pick up on it with other people.
Well, and I think it's amazing because it's like you're connected, like, for life in that way. And,
right.
And, like, I don't know. I think about, like, how, like, you know, it's like my aunt went to see, like, New Kids on the Block or whatever, like, very recently or whatever. But it's like, I can't imagine fandom having been the same back then as it is, like, maybe now more so they're able to, like, kind of live out that aspect that they didn't get to as kids. Because, I mean, that's the thing. We had the internet. We were always... You didn't have to go to a show or something in person to be connected to people. So it's like we had fandom 24/7, 365.
And you know what I think the thing is, too, which is interesting to think about now, is that back then, fandoms, whether it be One Direction or Jonas Brothers, things like that, you had, like, the Tiger Beat, you had J14, you had Teen Vogue, like, you had all these magazines.
All of them on my walls.
They really weren't that, like, they weren't inaccessible because you could just get them at any bookstore, and they also weren't, like, that expensive either. So you can get them, like, wherever, and they always had posters in them. You could always find out more information about the artist through them. You could take the silly little quizzes about, like, what band member would you marry, like, and stuff like that.
Oh, I don't know that I ever read a single one of them.
I always read that shit.
I don't think I read them. I think I only bought them for the posters. And I would buy them, like, religiously. Which, oh my God. When the sun shines into my room, you can see the tack holes on my wall. And it is exclusively from One Direction on that wall behind me.
That's funny, because, like, that's, like, I have, like, the moon tapestry that's up on my wall. That, behind that, is all, you'd see all the tack holes, all where the spots where the paint was, where the tape was, where the paint peeled up a little bit when I took them down. Like, I had huge Green Day posters, like, and those posters, like, some of them I bought on their website, too, so they weren't cheap. And I just, like, wow. That's so funny to think about, like, all the posters that you'd hang up on your wall. I have some epic photos of me taking pictures against those walls when I was younger that I was like, wow, these are great pics.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's fun to think, like, wow, I have single-handedly, I don't know, helped buy Harry Styles deodorant or whatever, toothpaste. I am, fuck it. The amount of money I have spent being a fan of things is
right
too much, but it's all worth it in the end.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like because it's the fandom episode, the people need to know that I like Niall Horan's new album so much that I'm like, is he my favorite current solo member? You were talking shit or you were talking gentle truth earlier about how Harry is everyone's favorite and how the others don't do as much, and I'm kind of like, I don't know, bestie. I'm seeing Louis not this coming week, but the next week, and I am so fucking excited. And then we're seeing Niall next year, and like, Niall's new album is so fucking good, and I'm just like, damn, I definitely probably slept on his other ones, because, like, the thing is, I know that I like them, they just never hit the spot where I got into them, and, like, the same thing was kind of true of Louis, and so I had to, like, go back, and now I'm like, oh my God, these are so good, and I don't know if that's even true, or if it's just fandom blinding me, but, like, it's, like, the same way that, like, honestly, listening to Niall's new album, I'm kind of like, I can hear both One Direction influences in this, which is just probably me, and it's also probably because he was in One Direction, and so, like, One Direction sounds like him because he's in it, but also it kind of gives off some, like, early, I don't know, like, I feel like 2000s era, maybe 2010s era, like, influences that I don't know, I mean, I can't even identify what they are. It's more so just, like, it would come up, like you would hear it on the radio, or I don't know how to explain it, but...
Well, I think, like, what I was alluding to with Harry before was because, like, he, like, almost hasn't taken a break since, like, Fine Line came out. You know, like, the only thing that stopped him was the pandemic. Otherwise, like, even when he came out with his first album, which that was just his self-titled, right?
Yeah.
Like, he did, like, a few shows and stuff like that. He did little tours. Like, I remember him playing in, like, clubs in New York, which was so crazy to think about because, like, now that guy's playing Madison Square Garden, you know, like, he really, like, his solo career, like, took off, like, right during quarantine. Like, when Harry's House came out, like, there's people that I knew that were not One Direction fans seeing his concerts. Where, like, I think with the other members, you have people, like, that are One Direction fans that are diehard, like, solo member fans, but, like, it's hard to be somebody that was on the outside to come in to liking their solo music.
It's so hard to imagine for me, but that's so true. Like, I know plenty of people who love Harry and, like, never listen to One Direction, don't care about any of that. And I'm like, I can't, like, my mind can't even wrap my mind around that. But my friend compared it to being a Justin Timberlake fan without listening to NSYNC. And I was like, that's also not me, but
yeah, right. Like I get that in the same comparison. It's like very similar.
But it's hard to imagine because it's like you were saying, like on the smaller band level, it's like there's plenty of like artists who have gone solo from like having like a decently well-known band or whatever. Like, I don't know, maybe Andrew McMahon might be a comparison or something, like had like other bands and stuff, but like I'm trying to think of other people, but like, you know, it's like you listen to the solo artists and but they're like so much older that you just don't know that they've been in all these other bands or whatever, and it's like, but it's like less of a big deal than like it seems like less of a thing in comparison to like, what do you mean you didn't? Well, but at the same time, then you go to those shows and then they play like in the same way that like the One Direction members now solo play songs from the One Direction discography.
Yes.
The same thing does happen with those smaller bands though, and there'll be these huge sing-alongs because everyone else does know the old stuff, and you're like, oh my god. It's like, I do kind of wonder, I'm like, yeah, I guess what happens to solo stans, I mean, unless they learn the set list, I'm like, what happens when they play the One Direction songs?
No, you're so right. I mean, I can only imagine that, like, the few shows that, like, I mean, well, What Makes You Beautiful is, like, the One Direction hit. So, like, when Harry would play that, yeah, people knew that. But, like, at his London shows, I'm pretty sure he played, like, Stockholm Syndrome, which is so interesting because that's such, like, it's such a throwback track. Like, it's such a, like, a deep cut track, as they call it.
Deep cuts. Yeah, Louis playing Night Changes, and he's playing Where Do Broken Hearts Go?
Oh my god.
That is deep cut. Oh.
Wait.
I just blew the people out. Again, fandom does it to you. I'm so sorry to all my haters out there who have had their eardrums blown out because I was excited. I'm sorry.
I wonder what Niall would play.
I think he's played Fool's Gold.
Ooh.
Because I've listened to... I only know this because on the one tour he did... Because he hasn't done a... I don't know if it's just US or tour in general, but he hasn't toured since COVID. Like, next year, like, the one he just announced will be his first tour. But I just remember there being a TikTok that must have been from pre-COVID that was him playing it. I don't know. I can hear it in my head, and it's so nice, and the crowd's singing, and that is the thing. To be in to hear those songs like at the solo shows, like it's just gonna. I'm so.
Yeah, it's gonna be beautiful. It's so nice. It's so nice to like, especially at the solo shows, because you know a lot of people that are there are One Direction fans or were, so they're gonna love that. Like just the hearing the crowd rejoice.
It's like getting to relive that feeling, at least, of the One Direction fandom for a day. Even though, like, I mean, it's the same thing as, like, Courtney and I going to see Louis' documentary in theaters, like, a couple months ago. It's like, it is that same feeling, except for then there's, like, solo stans, or not even solo stans, but just, like, One Direction fans and stuff, who are, like, 10 years younger than us, who are also there, and who are in the documentary, and it's just, like, so... It's just so, like, fascinating, the whole thing, and but, like, getting to experience that again, and, like, even for a day, and I just, like, it's just the same feeling of, like, the night before I saw One Direction, my entire Twitter timeline was just everybody saying tomorrow in all caps or whatever, or today. It turned to midnight, and everyone was like, today, and it was like, literal goosebumps right now. Because it's just like, that is literally how I feel about like seeing Louis in a couple weeks. I'm so excited.
Oh, cute. I love it. It really does, like, it brings out like such a, like, a primal feeling. Like, you almost like don't even realize what it's doing to you until after the fact.
I mean, I just, the brain juice good.
Yes. Where's the Cassie and Mariah Show stands? Where's our fans that tweet tomorrow when it's Tuesday and we got a podcast episode coming out the next day? Where are those people?
Yeah, where are they? I don't know, because I'm not on Twitter, because that's right, it's been 3 weeks, baby.
I actually find that I don't even go on Twitter or Instagram that much anymore. I don't even hit like my time limit some days, because I go on there and I hate it, so I just get off. Like, there's, like, I don't see anything on there that provides me with anything.
You go on Twitter and you're like, ugh, what's the point? Cassie's not on here? Where's the content?
I just feel like I go on there to tweet something that I need to, like, get off my chest, and it's mostly just something to the close circle, and then I just get off.
And that, folks, is a hint at what our segment's gonna be next season. And you're like, next season? What does that mean? Well, we've only got 3 episodes. So this is episode 17, and then we got 18, 19, and the season 1 is over. Which means that when this comes out, that'll be our 17th week of podcast releases, and that's wild.
That's wild to think about, because I feel like most people don't get this far.
Well, yeah. No, that's real. And, like, a lot of the podcasts I listen to are on, like, episode 200 and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
right.
That is absurd. Because this already feels like a lot. Like, 17 in the context of a lot of other things doesn't seem like a lot. But for us, that's, I don't know, 20 plus hours of content.
I feel like a lot of the times people don't even take breaks. Like, they just continuously go, which, like, is a lot. Which, honestly, like, maybe if you were getting paid to do this, yeah. But, like, at some point, you gotta, like, I feel like at some point, like, taking a break is very healthy, because you want time to just decompress. You want time to come up with new ideas, to plan ahead, things like that. Like, right now, I feel like we're on this part where we're just, like, it's like, we are grinding out with, like, editing, transcribing, posting new episodes, where we're on this, like, continuous grid. So we're, like, once we finish that and, like, start the second season, we can, I feel like we'll be actually able to plan it better on, like, the back end of things, where, like, you know, we have an episode coming out next week, but, like, that episode should already be done. And, you know, like, the groove that we were in the beginning, that we fell out of, like, I would like to at least try to, you know, keep that consistent throughout the entire time, even maybe give us more buffer room. Because, like, listen, like we said, we record these episodes, like, what, like 3 weeks in advance?
Yep.
I like that, because it gives us time to edit, and it gives us time to work on episodes. But in, like, timeline consistency, it's a little off, because, like, we'll be talking about something, and by the time you guys hear it, it has already came and passed. So I think that that's where it's kind of hard to, like, talk about things. But then again, like, we can't predict the future. Like, we can't talk about something that's going to happen the week that we put this episode out.
Exactly. And, like, I mean, we had to, yeah, and that's why it's like, actually, when we planned out this season, we had to plan out, oh, that episode's coming out around your birthday. We should do,
yes.
You know, it's like we had to plan in that way. But it's like, yeah, when we're talking about what we're up to, it's like, and I think it only feels that way because a lot of the people who listen are our friends. Shout out.
Shout out to the besties.
But it's like, because I think about when I listen to other people's podcasts, and to me it doesn't matter when the thing actually happened, because I'm just learning about it, so it's new to me.
That's true.
So it doesn't, like, usually it's nothing consequential, or if they're talking about something related to the world, I'm like, okay, so this was from back around then, that's, you know, so.
Yes.
But, yeah, I mean, thank you everyone for your grace and the fact that we record early. I don't think anyone's had any complaints, but...
Yeah, I know what you mean, though. I just, like, you know, because it's like, when I talk about playing, like, Tears of the Kingdom, it's like, I would talk, like, oh, the game's coming out, but, like, the episode that came out, the game is already out. So it's like, sometimes there's, like, continuity errors, but, like, again, I can't predict the future. We don't know what's happening. But, I don't think it's that big of an issue. And we're going to keep doing it. So if you hate it, well, that's too damn bad.
Facts. Yeah, no, but I love doing this. And I'm excited that we're going to take a break because, yeah, I feel like other podcasts don't get the chance to, if they don't take a break, they don't really get the chance to reflect. And I feel like that's especially important for a new podcast to, like, be like, okay, pause, reflect. And also, I do feel like, besides the beginnings of our episodes, a lot of our episodes are very, timeless, and, like, people could go back and learn about us, learn about different issues related to our disabilities and stuff, and just being, literally the tagline of the show, navigating disability and chronic illness in our 20s or whatever. So I hope that taking the break gives people a chance to listen to all the episodes we've put out so far too, instead of, because that is something that's very overwhelming these days, is the constant content. Sometimes it's hard to get caught up.
Exactly. And that's what I think too, is like taking the break is good for, because it gives enough people time to catch up. It gives us time to plan ahead, and to even, like, if we need to re-listen to episodes to hear things that we've talked about in the past, like, we can do so. It gives us time to put some other fun things together that we're not going to talk about just yet, but, like, we're working on right now, which is really exciting. And it just, like, I don't know, it just gives us more time to, like, build up the authentic excitement within ourselves too, to be like, oh, like, because I remember when we sat there and we made, like, when we came up with these topics for the episodes, and, like, when we were going to record and everything like that, we came up with them before we even recorded our first episode. So, like, we had a whole spreadsheet. And, like, that's what I'm looking forward to again, is, like, making that and, like, going through our podcast ideas doc and, like, bringing things out and, like, modifying things, and just, like, going through that whole experience again. Because it's really fun to, like, sit there and be like, oh, well, what are we recording this week? It's like, we know exactly what we're recording, and we already have a very loose outline from things that we've talked about before that we kept. So, like, every week we were like, oh, it's like, you know exactly what the test is going to be on because you put it together.
Because you wrote the answer key.
Yes.
Yeah, so if you're listening and you're like, I want to hear them talk about this. If there's, like, because I feel like this season we have been able to touch on a lot of issues that maybe, I don't know, people don't talk about as much, in terms of, like, I feel like, I don't know, you talking about, like, your medicinal marijuana journey, I think is super interesting, and you don't see a lot of stuff about that.
People love that shit, dude. They love that I cook.
So if there's, like, something in your life that you're like, I want to hear their experiences with this thing, I want to, like, I don't know, again, as we talked about at the beginning of this season, it's like, I think that feeling seen, feeling like you can relate to other people, I think is, I don't know, is a really good and nice feeling, and I feel like half the reason we make and consume content. So if there's something you want to hear us talk about, hit us up on social media or email us at tcmspod@gmail.com.
Yeah, and even, like, if you have any segment ideas, we are planning a few new ones for the new season, so if you have any segment ideas, throw them our way. Or, I don't know, it would be fun to do, like, a Q&A episode next season. So if you have any questions that you want to ask us, please send them. Send us any ideas, or anything that you want to see or discuss. Because even like you said, like, feeling seen and having people to relate to, I feel like is very, very fun and normal in the human experience. So if we can be your favorite parasocial besties, man, we'd love that.
And, like, yeah, don't be afraid to, like, whether it's disability related or just 20s related or just human related, all of it. We're down to talk about whatevs.
Yeah, man. But like we said, we got a bunch of ideas planned for season 2, which is gonna be very exciting.
But again, this is not the season finale yet.
Oh, this is not. We just wanted to talk about this because we know we have a few episodes left, and in case we, like, and also because, like, we did basically have a podcast meeting before we started recording. So I think that that's what conjured a lot of these ideas and thoughts, is that we were just talking about this. So, like, might as well mention it now while it's in our head.
And especially because it's like, I don't want it to just suddenly be the last episode and we're like, okay, bye, it's over. It's like, okay, give you some warning that, hey, after this episode, there's only 2 more.
Exactly. Which Okay, I'll be honest. It's weird to end on a 19.
Even though it's technically 20 episodes. Or no?
Technically, it's 21 pieces of content because we have the trailer and the bonus episode.
Don't make me do math again. Yeah.
Well, technically, yeah. Technically, you're right. Like, it is 20 because the bonus episode, we called it a bonus. We didn't give it a number.
Is 19 20? I can't.
Wait, what do you, like, I was like, why is this so hard for you to understand?
Counting is hard. Because there, I guess, well, but is there 19 episodes and not 20? But why wouldn't we do 20?
I think we didn't do 20. Here's the thing, is I'm going on vacation in July. So we were trying to plan this, so this way I didn't have to worry about editing an episode while I was away. So that's why we're cutting it when we are.
That makes sense. Oh yeah, actually, I don't
that was
think,
the original idea.
I think we planned based on the actual calendar, not on the number of episodes.
Yeah, we planned on the calendar.
That makes way more human sense.
Yeah, because we would have never did this to you guys on purpose. Ending on a 19.
Yeah, because that's just horrible and disgusting.
So unfinished. Well, that's a wrap on this week's episode. Be sure to follow the Cassie and Mariah Show wherever you listen to podcasts, at TCMS Pod on Twitter and Instagram, and look out for new episodes every Wednesday.
Bye!